Greetings and welcome to Rauta. Remember back in the days when Death and Doom made marriage in United Kingdom, offering us bands like My Dying Bride and Anathema and other bands that were like not afraid of going a little bit gothic with their style and then blending in a little bit of a death metal. Now gone are those days when bands like Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride, Anathema and the likes were creating such music that would, become more like a divider, combining death and doom and then later on evolved into something else. Maybe getting a little bit lighter along the way, but never abandoning their darkness or lack of hope for that matter, despair. Now, come 2023 and what we have here is the band called The Crawling, also from United Kingdom, and this band is basically coming from the same territory. Only partially, however, because while this is definitely operating in the world of doom and death metal, this is not as much, say, gothic. This is maybe lacking their church spires and old castles and dungeons and those tragic love affairs, where it is more closing into more traditional death metal with its slow-paced or at best mid-tempo stuff. But nonetheless, interesting combination because I have kind of a soft spot for this kind of genre. And Crawling is interesting, kind of a promising name in that territory. However, when it comes to the actual songwriting, I wish they would kick more ass. The point here is, this is not a band that is going to, fill you in with a lot of hit songs. On the contrary, this is more like avoiding being catchy and full of hits and all that stuff. That is not to say the band is without merits, or this album for that matter, but I'm saying maybe a little bit of gothicness, maybe a little bit of darkness would have been, helping out the band, so to say. Now, this is the third album called All of This for Nothing, which is already a very, very pessimistic take, and I love it. That's kind of a part of the charm here. And what would you see if you open the similar artists tab? It's not exactly any of those UK-based bands I just listed, but Swallow the Sun coming from Finland, which is here listed as melodic doom death metal. I mean, I can kind of go with that, because The Crawling is more into that department, but with the lack of tragic feeling. And I think that's one of the major flaws. That doesn't mean it's a big one, but it's one of the biggest things separating this one from the bands mentioned. When there is no tragic, when there is no darkness, you're like, okay, so it's just basically slow death metal. Really? Now, that's not a bad thing or without merits, like said, but it is something that might separate this one from the bands that really were paving the way, being pioneering and all that stuff. I'm saying The Crawling is definitely kind of a closing in. It's like getting into the right direction, it's getting to the right genre, but now it's more about honing, tweaking, polishing and all that stuff, the whole thing here. Basically what I'm trying to say here is this is very much work in progress towards greatness. It's not great yet. It's more like on the decent side of things. There are lots of things which I can, really enjoy. Being heavy, sometimes nice guitar leads or melodies taking place. And there's just certain kind of a gloominess that is almost reachable. But then it's not. And maybe that is the one that separates. Now, mind you, even though I said I kind of have a big respect for the bands mentioned, this also means I'm not a big fan of, like, say, early Paradise Lost. I grew up with that stuff as a teenager, sure, but basically the early albums are not that good for me. And much like that, The Crawling is still, taking the very first steps. Much like Paradise Lost was taking the first steps until they really, broke the wall, so to say, with the album known as Icon 30 years ago. And in my opinion, The Crawling is still very much in the phase, like figuring out what they want to do. And if you ask me, I would say add more darkness, add more tragic feeling, add more gloominess, certain kind of sinister atmosphere or fear of death or whatever. That is something that is the kind of a missing ingredient. Apart from that, these guys know what they're doing. They manage to sound heavy. They have the proper growly vocals. The production is already pretty good. I mean, it could be even more overwhelming. I kind of wish it was. But when it comes to those fine details, separating the real good ones from the ones that are just quite okay or decent or whatever you want to call it, that's still something that I would say is missing. It's almost like a food which is already good, but you're like, this is missing something. Sometimes that something is just add a little bit salt, add a little bit black pepper, and there is done. So the final seasoning is something that is missing in my opinion, but apart from that, there's no reason why not to check out the crawling. They have the puzzle pieces, they have figured out how to put them together. It's just more about the finishing touches really. As such, I would say, given this album 43 minutes or so, with a little bit the lengthier side of things, yeah, maybe squeeze a little bit those songs together, like there's no reason to overextend for say 8 minutes, maybe sometimes 4 or 5 minutes, and you're boom, done with it. That is without going extending too much, much like my videos. They would be way better with the 2 or 3 minutes thing. Now, all this being said, however, it's time to quit and say, go to check out the crawling. I think it's worth your time, unless you're really allergic to doom death metal to begin with. And if that's the case, there's no hope for you. So, take it as a tip or not. This album has been out since August 2023 through GrindScene Records. So, if you like it, go and buy it. Should be available on distro nearby or mail order, whatever, as physical format. And that's pretty much all you need to know. Go and buy and enjoy it.